Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Jan Keefe, class of '82, and the immediate past president of the CU Medical Alumni Association Board of Directors, and also a past president of the Colorado Medical Society. Thank you for joining us on our second presentation of the House Staff Professional Development Series. This series was developed in response to what the CU Medical Alumni Association has been hearing from you, that need for more education on professional development with topics not covered before in training. Please know that whether you are originally from the University of Colorado or are here for residency, you are now and always a part of our community and alumni association and family, and this series is just one of many ways that we want to support you. There is a vast alumni network that you can utilize, and I encourage you to reach out to myself or Vanessa Duran about other alumni resources. Some of these include our electronic library access, LinkedIn page, CU Alumni Instagram, cultural events, connecting one-on-one with alumni, and more. Before we start this program, I'd like to take a moment to thank two of our partners for collaborating with us on this event. I would like to thank the Housestaff Association and recognize their president, Dr. Fakhri. The Housestaff Association has provided leadership, feedback, and marketing for these events. I would also like to recognize the Colorado Medical Society and Diana Fetter, their Senior Director of Business Development. Colorado Medical Society and its 5,000 physician members are always here to support you, our residents at cms.org, and we thank them for their help in securing today's speaker. So now, let me introduce our speaker, Jeff Feeks, Account Executive with COPIC. Jeff's niche is working with medical residents and dental students. He meets with these health professionals and provides strategies to help them consolidate their debt and jumpstart their financial goals through unbiased advice and specialized strategies based on their individual situations. He helps clients with financial services and products, as well as disability and life insurance. I wish I had had such important advice when I was a resident. So without further ado, we welcome Jeff Feeks.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, Jan. And yes, the unfortunate reality is a lot of older medical professionals that are tenured wish they did have this advice and wish they did receive some just basic fundamental training when it comes to true financial planning and kind of a couple things they can do to really shift their financial livelihoods. So with that, we'll kind of just quickly dive in here. And to all on the Zoom call, I appreciate you taking the time. This truly is really important, but we're just going to have fun with this, try and keep it as informal as possible. And if you have any further questions for me, my contact information will be provided to you at a later point in time. Always happy to assist. So as Jan mentioned, my name is Jeff Feeks. I'm an account executive at the COPIC Financial Service Group. And as she said, COPIC really at the heart of it tries to help healthcare professionals with their financial livelihoods. And the title of our presentation today is Pragmatic, Small Financial Planning. Not going to make it too difficult for us. Most of the group, like we know, are residents, and we're going to truly tailor this presentation to your needs. So with that, why this presentation and why now? Why is it important to you? And as soon as you guys start your medical advanced careers, a couple of things that you really need to take focus on, but the primary one is mitigating your risks to achieve your true financial independence. And I think the word financial independence, there's plenty of blogs out there these days. Physicians, financial independence, Physicians FIRE, which is an acronym for financial independence. there's a true distinction that once you get to a certain point in your career, regardless of, whatever you're doing, whatever specialty you're doing, having the option to either continue to practice at a certain point in time or continue or decide retirement or another philanthropic venture, having the option to do so and select which route you choose is the most crucial thing in your entire life. And quite honestly, one of the main points why you're going to medical school is having options to become a physician. So all of that kind of resonates and is going to resonate in full in a comprehensive measure in our presentation as we move forward. So, brief overview of topics of discussion. And there's pretty much 3 or 4 that we're really going to hone in on here today. Basic tips of building a budget. We're going to talk about keeping up with the Joneses and, what you're making currently as a resident, whereas, you might be making 3 or 4 times that when you sign your first employer contract. Another big thing that we actually need to touch on are insurances. Yes, the adage of, insurance, 15 minutes to save you 50% or more, we have to touch on it. It's your largest risk, unfortunately, at this point in time, at this stage in the game. We're also going to touch on simple versus compound interest and how that essentially comes into play when you're comparing your student loans and other investment vehicles. And then quite honestly, vehicles of investment, we're really tailoring this to you guys. So the options that the university provides to you as a vehicle investment, your 403B, your 401k, your 457, what are those plans truly? What do they mean to you? And kind of giving you a broad spectrum of, this is an option to you currently, but what does this look for you down the road? And there's 3 additional bullets there. Those are more probably advanced strategies and can be discussed at a later point in time. So this is our first slide, and you might be scratching your head, your foundation, soil, roots. What does this actually mean? Prior to this, just for the sake of keeping things easy for you, I talk about a resident's financial life as a full-growing tree, a well-oiled tree, and you can use house. It's a really cheesy it's a really cheesy, description of your financial life, but it holds true merit. And so when you're looking at trying to grow a tree and truly build its foundation, you need to start from the ground up before you do anything. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they talk about financial literacy, they want to go directly into investments and what is my difference between Bitcoin versus cryptocurrency versus Tesla, and you have all these channels of other investments where, unfortunately, building that foundation and a strong tree starts from the soil and roots. So that's where that comes from. So a couple bullets. Building a team of trusted professionals, first and foremost. Kind of the main 3 I always steer people towards, especially residents. CPA, anyone that can help you with taxes, tax mitigation, reducing tax liabilities. That's going to be a huge first professional that you need to establish trust with. Financial planner, financial advisor being the next. The only thing I have on there, trying to remain as unbiased as possible, as I am one of those professionals, having someone that remains independent, I think, is fairly important and not tied to a specific fund company. And you can tell that when you're speaking to a financial professional, if they have an outside interest, or I guess an inside interest, and steer you towards a direct product or service. Someone with an independent tie won't do that. They will tie your objectives to 3 or 4 options and provide that menu to you. And then finally, another trusted professional you probably need to, and this can be a little bit later on the road, an estate planning attorney. Establish a will, trust, but for the sake of our conversation today, probably a CPA and a financial professional. setting aside 3 to 6 months for the what if. And I happen to call this your ICE fund, your in case of emergency. This is, if something were to happen to you devastatingly, and you at least know you have some cash set aside for the catastrophic what if. I think coming right out of residency into a more professional, specialized profession, having an in case of emergency fund is one of the most crucial things that you can set aside. Building your budget, which we will get into, on the next slide here. Diagnosing appropriate insurance needs, locking in your rates. Again, we'll touch on this a little bit down the road. And then creating a will, like I mentioned, that's kind of one of your third professionals that you can more so, extend further down the road there as well. All right. So from that second bullet, building your budget, what does this truly mean to you? And so this is the rule of 50 to 51. And not many people have heard of this rule because it's so simplistic in nature, unfortunately. So the rule of 50-51 is if you make 50, you don't spend 51. And unfortunately, I need to say that. A lot of people, my friends included, really like to over leverage themselves with debt. But it's the quickest way to get yourself in trouble is spending 51 when you make 50. And I bring this up quite honestly because there's a true psychology behind it. When you make more money, you are more apt to spend more money. And I don't know why people are wired this way. There's a lot of psychology books written about this, but someone sitting in your position in the next year, 2 years, what have you, when your income is going to triple, quadruple when you sign that contract, it's important to actually recognize that. Again, I think at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned keeping up with the Joneses, signing a contract, wanting to buy the nice expensive house, the nice expensive car. It's a nice thought in nature, but again, it goes back to that psychology of money. When you make more money, you just have an apt to spend more money. So moving on. So budget-wise, this is your standard rule you truly can follow. It's your rule of 50, 20, 30. And now this is pretty robust on the saving side, and you'll see what I mean here. So this is, for the sake of argument, for your net pay. So after tax, this is your budgeting technique. 50% of your net paycheck goes towards your fixed costs. So fixed costs, I always give the example of it's deducted on a monthly basis and you don't even think about it. So apartment rent, home mortgage, auto insurance, car payment, all the way down to the nitty gritty of, like, if you have a Netflix subscription, $10 a month, toss it into your 50 bucket. Gym membership, toss it into your 50 bucket. Kind of just a really good rule of thumb, just so you can kind of benchmark your next 50%. And before we move even onto the 20 and 30, getting your 50% bucket down is the most crucial. See, time and time again, people are not poor is the wrong word, but house stressed, and their mortgage stressed. And so when you get above that 50 threshold on your net, it puts extreme pressure primarily on the 30 bucket, which we'll talk on, but also the 20 bucket. So the 20 bucket there is savings, an investment vehicle. Yes, the financial professional is telling you to save 20% of your net income. And I understand that's truly robust, but I also allow people to toss in their student loans in there. Student loan repayment, 401k investments, 20 bucket, leaving us the 30, which is everything else under the sun. Travel, eating out, go nuts. Touching on, good versus bad debt, pay off your credit cards, people. Quickest way to get into trouble is interest accumulating on credit cards. All right, types of insurance. So what we have here is your true difference. Well, actually, I'll back up. Two types of coverage that you truly need to be focused on at this point in your life is protecting your livelihood or your incomes, and then protecting your loved ones. And there's a third coverage called, an umbrella, a personal umbrella for anything excess. But for the sake of this presentation, we're really going to hone in on those two. So first and foremost, let's talk about life coverage because that's so fun. Let's see here, my text box. So for the sake of simplicity, life coverage comes in two forms: term coverage or permanent coverage. And truly compare that from renting versus owning your own property. Renting your property is on a year-by-year basis. You don't develop any equity. Really similar with life coverage, it's on a term-by-term basis, year over year. Really standard is like 20 or 30-year term life coverages. They don't hold any equity. They're there for the death benefit coverage. Why would you hold term coverage? It's relatively cheap. Don't necessarily, you could look into $1 million to $2 million of coverage and be surprised at how much it is on a monthly basis. Whereas permanent coverage, your cost of insurance is going to be a little bit more expensive due to it lasting in perpetuity. The insurance company is under the realization that they're going to pay death benefit proceeds to you or your family. So this is kind of the biggest one. How much do you need? And quite honestly, as a resident, do you actually need life coverage? So we're going to go over this dime analysis, and this is just really simplified. So when looking at how much life coverage I truly need, you look at any debts you might hold. Any federal student loan debts are actually relieved upon your passing. So I honestly don't even like tossing federal student loan debt into this calculation. But car loans, credit cards, privatized student loan, that can fall in your debt category. Your I is income supplementation to your spouse. So again, not married, don't have a significant other. This category does not involve you. Industry standard says that 3 to 7 times your annual income should be a benchmark of how much life coverage you truly need. Third bucket is mortgage costs. This one weirdly could be thrown in the debt, but that's not the dime analysis. Mortgage coverage is a really nice way to actually figure out how long of term coverage you need to hold. I.e., if you have a 30-year term of your mortgage, probably holding a subsequent 30-year term life insurance policy. Those kind of mirror pretty nicely. And then E is education costs for children. So again, if you don't hold any children, not really imperative to you. Also, this is for the young professionals. If you have kids, it is an objective of yours to pay for your kids' education costs, college education costs. And also, this is the biggest bucket of your life insurance analysis that could vary the most. If it is an objective to pay for your child's education costs, how much is that? Is it public school? Is it private institution? Is it undergrad? Is it graduate school? This one is the biggest question mark I see on a day-to-day basis, is how do I calculate how much life coverage I need based upon this? And then sadly, you see a small f there behind the dime analysis, the morbidity of being able to sell life insurance coverage, finality costs, 25 to 30K right now for finality costs. Won't touch much more onto that. So that's life coverage. And then secondly, so you're covering your family. Now you're covering your income through disability coverage. And we were going to put up a poll on this, or I was thinking of it. How many times have you guys heard you need to protect your income with disability coverage? It's your greatest asset. I'm sure everyone would poll answer, yes, I've heard of disability coverage. But if you haven't, so here's just some high-level bullet points. Disability coverage is in the event you were to become too sick or injured to work, you're protecting your income and your income interest. And why does that matter to you as a resident physician? The unfortunate reality is you guys have a lot more time invested in your education to your profession than, let's say, even myself. And that's just the odds honest truth is you spend a lot of time in school. You need to protect your asset, which is your ability to work. Easiest way to also describe how much disability insurance coverage costs, just from a standpoint, because it is expensive. Every dollar you make, anticipate putting 3 to 4 pennies aside of that dollar to insure your disability coverage. That is outside of residency. So let's say you waited 5 to 10 years, 3 to 4 pennies for every dollar you make, you're putting towards disability coverage. Now you can kind of view this from a sense of like, you're going to become a physician, and the scope of jobs, you won the job lottery. So if you won the lotto and you elected to annuitize it throughout your life, let's say you are expected to make 200 grand in annual income, would you be okay risking 200 grand of your income for the next 30 to 35 years? You're collecting 200K on an annual stream, or and anything can happen to that, by the way. Or are you okay collecting 196 grand for the next 30 years, and that's guaranteed for the life of your working history? And a lot of people, you know, if you're in that boat where I'm okay risking it for that 3 to 4 grand of difference, don't hold disability coverage. But it's kind of the sense of investing in that income stream for the life of your working life, because you invested so much time, is what's so important. And then the only other thing I really want to touch on with disability coverage, because there is so much more that you can discuss, locking in your insurability. You know, the next time you see your doctor could potentially be your last from an insurability standpoint. And I give the example of, and unfortunately, this is the case, Jay Cutler, who was the Denver Broncos quarterback. He played his 3rd or 4th season with the Broncos and became extremely tired. And they found out that he actually developed type 1 diabetes. So he was 24 years old when he developed type 1 diabetes. At that point in time, he was no longer insurable for disability coverage. To give you a sense of, next time you go and see your doctor, your insurability could be long gone. So while you're healthy, lock in your insurability and just get it taken care of. And I'm always happy to assist further on any questions there as well. This again touches on the insurability portion, you know, things to consider when you're applying, your true health, prescription medications you're taking. With life insurance, they actually do look at family history. They look into if you have any diabetic, early cardiac arrest, or cardiac issues, family history wise. Disability looks into hazardous activities. So living in the great state of Colorado, do you backcountry ski with a beacon? Do you rock climb? Those are things that actually might not allow you to obtain disability coverage. Always kind of an interesting point. So kind of moving along here. So from the standpoint of our tree, right? So you develop your roots, your soil, you've got your protection, you got your budget figured out. Now you move into kind of, you know, trunk, and can kind of start building your wealth around there. And this is the section I really wanted to focus on when you're really looking at your retirement options through the university, the options that are available to you, and what's the tax implication behind all of that. So there's 3 buckets of money you can kind of see right here. And the unfortunate part is there is a 4th bucket, and usually meeting in person, this holds a lot more clout, but there's a free money bucket. And everyone kind of says, you know, what's the free money bucket? It's your 401k match. So unfortunately, your 401k and 403b through the university as a resident does not hold a matching provision, but at your next employer, let's say, typical 401ks do hold a matching provision where if you elect 5% of your gross pay into one of these vehicles, a funding company will match it 5%. And I always say, you know, before you move on to these buckets, make sure you're taking advantage of the free money bucket. Our next buckets here, taxable buckets. So this is based upon, they call it capital gains, and they give you examples of stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Homes also fall into this taxable bucket. Just know that your taxable bucket, typically on a long-term gain side, is less than a tax deferred bucket or your ordinary income bucket. So that's pretty much all I wanted to touch on that one. The big one here is the tax deferred bucket. 401ks, IRAs, 403bs. This essentially is what it says, is you're deferring your tax through these buckets or through these vehicles of retirement. So primarily, let's just keep it simple with the 403b and the importance of at least starting your investments through the 403b. At the point you decide to distribute those funds, so ideally that would be after your age of 59 and a half to potentially 65, your true retirement years when you need that money. It's based upon your taxable bracket of distribution that money is taxed. So you're foregoing the tax on the front end to pay the tax on the back end. And that's both with contributions and gain of investment. So this is like one of the more common things I'm asked is, in particular with your 403b option, is you have a traditional tax deferred option, but also a Roth option where you pay tax now, and then when you pull it out when you need it, there's no tax implication. The devil's advocate side of me, so there's pluses and minuses with both of these. Paying tax now, you don't have to worry about it down the road. So when you're reviewing your marginal tax rate now, what it might be in 5 years, it's probably less at this point in time just due to the amount of income you're currently making. Where in 5 years, just being able to defer it and your taxable bracket at your respective age of 59 or 65 when you're retired is probably less than your highest earner years. A lot easier to demonstrate this via pen paper. So this also just goes back to relationship with your CPA, understanding tax mitigation. Usually those conversations always end somehow in the line of, if you have an option to invest in a traditional 403b and a Roth 403b, you should probably diversify 50-50 of your contributions into each and call it good, is kind of the basic investment advice I typically give people. And then this third bucket, tax-free. So like we touched on, Roth 403b, just know that at a certain stage of income, you will be phased out of making Roth IRA contributions, not Roth 403b. I need to make myself clear there. But if you were to go open up a Roth IRA outside of your company, if you make more than $115,000 gross income, this option is not allowed. You are phased out of making Roth IRA contributions, and the IRS just simply notes that. So realistically, for the majority of this group, I would have to imagine when you sign your first employer's contract, the only tax-free vehicle outside of an employer-sponsored plan is going to be cash accumulation and insurance policy. And I really didn't touch on that piece a whole lot, but that is the permanent life insurance piece, not the term. Permanent life insurance proceeds, similar to a home, how you develop equity in your home because you're paying principal and interest. You develop accumulation within a life insurance policy that you can then pull out on a tax-free basis. So that's kind of the only mark I really wanted to make there. Moving on. Okay, so when it comes to residents and those just coming out of residency, this is another really big topic, right? Is for those that don't have the burden of student loans, be extremely grateful. You made it, and so you can go right into just investing and using the time and power of compounding interest. But for those who kind of are in this bucket of, I do have burdensome student loans, They keep me up at night. I would much rather get these paid off before I do anything else. It's not a bad rationale. However, you need to take into consideration when you are only investing into loan repayment rather than 401ks. Everyone is different on this. Everyone holds different objectives. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. This is just one perspective of thinking. So I note in that top bullet point, Americans are great at paying off debt, but horrible at saving. And you might laugh because our current Treasury balance sheet is in the trillions and trillions of dollars. So I don't think we're fantastic at paying off debt, but some people are great at paying off debt. And I think it probably needs to state more along the lines of, we prioritize paying off debt first and foremost over everything. And the reality is it's a misconception because you don't define the debt. And when defining debt, you either need to look at it as, did it cause appreciation of income and assets in your life, or did it cause depreciation of income and assets? Most common forms of depreciating debt: car loans, credit card debt, kind of along that like. Appreciating assets, typically your home, your mortgage, and reality, student loan. Student loan debt is an appreciation because at some point in your career, it's going to be your highest earning income year. That year's probably not going to be tomorrow. It's probably going to be a continued upward trend. And so when you're viewing appreciating debt or appreciating vehicles through debt, they don't need to be looked at paying off as quickly as possible in my mind. Social Security, I'm not really going to touch on that for this group. And then a lot of people actually do need to hear this. The responsibility of saving for your retirement is 100% on you. No one's going to hold your hand. No one's going to make sure you're on track. The ownership is going to fall in your lap. And this goes back to my original slide that notes the entire point of this is getting to your retirement year and having the option, do I want to continue practicing or do I want to retire? Do I want to do philanthropic work? And that is only based upon having the assets to do so. And this is a horrible infographic, which makes me very queasy, but 20% of people 55 or older in America have zero in retirement savings. So what I've done is I essentially just ran a comparison contrast between paying off student loan debt versus if you were to invest it in a like-minded or invest it in a retirement vehicle. So what you have here is you have standard student loan repayment of $30,000, loan rate of 6%. A lot would take that right now, and a lot would think that's crazy, ridiculously high. Period of length for this student repayment is 10 years or 120 months. So they're paying about $333 a month into this thing to get this loan paid off. They know a total interest paid of just shy of 10 grand. So all in all, they're just shy of 40 grand of taking out this loan over 10 years. Honestly, not too bad. However, when you compare it to an investment vehicle, and that's all we're doing here, is we're just trying to make the smartest money decision for you at this stage in your career. Again, tailoring back to everyone's objectives are different. People view debt differently, but this is just a mathematical perspective. If you were to invest in that same 10-year period, so 120 months, instead of a 6% interest, you are earning a 6% rate of return. You're investing $333, which is the exact same repayment of that loan. Your end value is $54,846. So roughly a gain of $14,885, where if you compare this gain to your interest paid, it's fairly comprehensive. And you might be sitting back and thinking, there's psychological differences between these two, But the main takeaway we're trying to make here is when paying down loans, simple interest comes into play. Whereas as soon as you start making investments and using time on your side, hence this is 10 years down the road, compound interest comes into play. And so let's get some realistic numbers of what this looks like. I put this slide in here because it's a little bit cheesy. Also, Einstein just looks kind of funny, but Einstein was noted as compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. So this slide might seem a little bit blurry for you, but hopefully everyone can actually see this. And if not, I'm going to kind of discuss this where the point will make sense. This is a two chart difference between, on the left, you have a resident, let's call it. Resident is 25 years old, and a resident that's 35 years old. And for the sake of argument, this 25-year-old is investing while also paying off student loans, kind of a longer version. Whereas this 35-year-old resident, for their first 10 years, they've decided to pay down student loans first thing, and then they start investing at 35. So the 25-year-old at an 8% return starts investing $5,000 a year until their age of 35. Whereas the 35-year-old invests $5,000 a year until their respective age of 60. So a fairly large difference between amount contributed. You can actually see here, the 25-year-old has put away $55,000, whereas the 35-year-old has put away $130,000. Because the 25-year-old started 10 years earlier, his or their end value at their age of 60 is $615,580. The 35-year-old who's just turned 60, their end value is $430,754. So you just kind of let this sink in, and you think to yourself, is this accurate? Yes, go run the calculations. But how could this truly be? It's the power of compounding interest, where, and I was showing this to a couple people beforehand, the 25-year-old, when they turn 35, these two are in the exact same place right here and to right there, where the 25-year-old, when he turns 35, he has almost $90,000 invested, whereas the 35-year-old has zero. And so that 90 grand compounding at an 8% return just goes to show you the power of interest compared to the power of principal. And the power of interest, again, meaning the ability for your assets to earn money, whereas the power of principal, you can only set aside so much money without it working for you and have, nest egg for retirement. So this is the slide that really kind of goes hand in hand with when you're sitting back, if you hold student loans, thinking about utilizing the power of time on your side while you have it, and really not delaying the power of compounding interest is the thing that needs to resonate the most with you here. So types of investment vehicles, again, this is more in the nitty gritty, and I know we only have about, 7 more minutes here. This is where a financial planner can truly help you. Where do I need to invest my money? This goes back to our conversation of, Bitcoin, mutual funds, individual stocks, bonds. Anyone probably on this call, based upon their age, needs to be fairly aggressive, I'd say. You have the power of time. Volatility isn't as large of an issue for you when it comes to true investments. So if you're realistically looking at this thing and saying, hey, what are options I really need to invest in? Probably this line right here. Let's see here. Is where you need to look at, where you go high grade common stock, growth funds, anything up above this. And I would actually even note these balanced mutual funds can be a part of your portfolio as well. Anything below you're kind of fairly risk averse here. They're appropriate vehicles for those that are age appropriate, but also hold risk objectives that are in line there. But for the most part, if you have the power of time on your side, if you don't need assets in the next 5 to 10 years, utilizing aggressive growth for your portfolios through your 401(b) at the university, 401(k), it's going to be your best use of funds moving forward. Let's see here, clear all these. Okay. So again, what matters to you when it comes to looking at individual investments? Diversify your assets. Diversify, again, a true independent financial professional should be able to provide you multiple examples of mutual funds, exchange traded funds, stocks that are truly diversified. So you're just not invested in one particular allocation type. This way you're diversifying your risk out a little bit more. Another huge thing for young investors, look for low cost options. The biggest burden sometimes in a retirement portfolio is what are the fees that you're paying for? What are the underlying fees? Those underlying fees in turn negatively affect your returns in the long end. And so having low cost fees and low cost options, investment options, probably one of the most important things you can look at this stage in your careers. Sound fundamentals, don't really need to touch on that. And then don't be turned off by professional management in mutual funds. A lot of people are it's where we are currently. Schwab portfolios aren't truly professionally managed, but looking at professional managed portfolios, just don't be adverse to it. Just be open-minded and take your intuition into account. If someone's BSing you, make sure you understand, or at least if you have a gut feeling, get a second opinion. And unfortunately, this is a slide I like to share as well, just high level. You can see it's a little bit dated here where it notes investment returns from 1986 to 2015. Average annual return that a US stock did was 11.1%. You can't really see it well there. Whereas the average investor in that same respective time frame only yielded 2.5%. And a lot of that has to do with the psychology of investing, people trying to time the market, getting out of the market, not buying back in at the appropriate time because they think they can time it. So I just have a little blurb here where stay the course, long-term investing has its rewards. Deal with volatility, utilize time on your side, and don't panic. So kind of to wrap things up here, these are 5 things you can do tomorrow or today. Build your team, start reaching out to individual CPAs, leverage your contacts at the university, reach out to CPAs, reach out to wealth advisors, educators, attorneys, establish your savings. So like we discussed, get an ICE account for in case of emergencies. Start investing a small amount into your 401k or 403bs. Also lock in your insurance rates, protect your income, make sure that it's the only thing that's going to get you from point A to point B is your ability to earn money. The only thing that's going to make that train fall off the tracks is your inability to earn money. Take advantage of tax-free vehicles now. We touched on that, the difference between Roth 403b options, Roth IRA options. You'll eventually be phased out, becoming a high income earner. Don't wait to invest. Talked about the difference between the 25-year-old investor to the 35-year-old investor, the power of compound interest. Einstein called it the 8th wonder of the world. And then just review your plan. Make a good connection with someone, a financial professional. Make sure they have your best interest. Things change, things happen. Someone that has your back and is acting in a fiduciary capacity is one of the greatest things you can do for your financial well-being, and just make sure you're reviewing it appropriately. And then another little cheesy quote here just to end our presentation, but people don't plan to fail, they simply fail to plan. And getting an established plan down is one of the best things you can do. And with that, again, my name is Jeff Feeks. I'm an account executive at COPIC Financial Service Group, and appreciate all of your guys' time. Any further questions, we're going to run into a quick question, 10, 15 minutes here time, but I can always be reached at a later point in time. Thank you again so much. And with that, we'll turn it back to the appropriate members of the university.
Hi, thank you, Jeff. That was absolutely incredible. I hope you people really really appreciate the pearls that Jeff was kind of throwing at you during this. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm from class of 82. So if you do the math at all, I can kind of tell you that I have made some of these mistakes during my career, and I've learned a lot. And as you're getting some of your questions up on the chat, which I'll present to Jeff, I want to tell you that you can trust your Medical Alumni Association, you can trust CU, you can trust your Housestaff Association for getting you to the right place. I hope Jeff will tell you how to get in touch with him. There was, I was studying chemistry. I didn't study finance. So I would recommend a sit down with Jeff. Also get in touch with me if you need anything, janmd@mac.com. I'm a poster child for the disability insurance. Okay. At the peak of my career, I developed a lethal, incurable disease. And thanks to having disability insurance paid for by post-tax dollars, I was able to retain my income and support 5 kids, okay? So Jeff tells you the truth here. And, your Housestaff Association, Alumni Association, COPIC, and CMS have your backs, residents. So let's see if we can find some questions for Jeff. Let's see. So where, let's see, do we have, I don't know where I can see chat. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. All right, so here we are. Okay, let's see. So there are thoughts on whether to keep your funds with a past employer when you switch roles, if permitted, or move to an outside IRA. What do you think, Jeff?
Really good question. A question I get quite frequently, in all honesty. And this kind of touches on keeping your expenses as low as possible, to be perfectly honest. If your past employer is allowing you to keep investing in your 401k and you feel comfortable enough with portfolio allocating, I would say keep it with your past employer. Let them take the burden of those costs. Another thing you can potentially do is a past employer's 401k rolled into your new employer's 401k. So you're already starting to compound that base limit and kind of get a head start on things. If those aren't options to you, rolling into an IRA, using a professional that actually has your back, allocating appropriately, good low expense options, then that's the route you would go. Is if you don't have either of those two options, then rolling in to an IRA.
Great, and feel free, attendees, to ask us any questions here. I guess another question. So here's another one. If I'm completely debt-free, okay, so that would be no student loan debt, credit card debt, etc. What is the best way to grow my money?
Right. The best way, again, these answers are going to start sounding a little bit redundant. Utilizing your employer's plans through 401ks, through 403bs. If you can max out your retirement through 401ks, which this year you're allowed to invest $19,500 in your 401k, start there. As soon as you reach that maximum threshold of I've invested $19,500 in my 401k or employer-sponsored accounts, kudos to you. Then you probably are under the rationale you probably need to work with someone else to look at appropriate vehicles that are going to be advantageous to you and your financial livelihood.
So here's a question. Is it better to pay for your disability policy with before tax or after tax dollars? What do you think?
Disability coverage needs to be paid for with after-tax dollars. Case in point, because a carrier will not allow tax-free benefit to be paid to you if you're deducting it in any way, shape, or form, so before tax. So disability premiums are always paid after tax. There are other products that will allow you to deduct premiums that are more business related in nature, but again, more advanced planning at that point. So individual disability coverage after tax dollars, no question about it.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Here's a couple more questions.
Sure.
Okay, if I am completing residency this year, so first attending job starts in the fall, not through the university, am I too late to start a Roth account based on potential earnings?
No, another really good question. One I get often, and the unfortunate reality with the Roth IRA, not if you're comparing it to the 401k, the Roth IRA only allows you to invest $6,000 a year, but it's going back to the point of using your money in the most wise way possible. So your adjusted gross income is going to be based upon what you make primarily from August to end of year, starting your new professional specialty. So more than likely, you'll be able to invest your Roth IRA. And the cool thing with Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs, when they're individually owned, you actually have the ability to make, for instance, 2021 contributions all the way until April 15th of 2022. So in the event your money's strapped, you actually can note 2020 contribution or 2021 contributions and still make those in the months of January, February, March, and April 15th of 2022.
Great. Well, okay, now here's another question. In your opinion, are rental properties a good investment?
Probably depends upon the market. This is, if you're comparing it to an investment vehicle, historically, the S&P 500, which is one of the largest domestic indices on our stock exchange, yields about 10 to 11% year over year. And whenever I say that number, it's shocking to people, but the reality is it's true. Annual returns are somewhere in the range of 10 to 11%. So whatever investment property you're looking into, if you're comparing it side by side to our standard domestic S&P market, you better be earning somewhere in the range of 10% from a true cost comparison standpoint. So that's what I would note on that investment property.
Okay, very good. Well, here's another question.
Perfect.
So do you have a recommendation for percentage of savings that should go to retirement, college saving funds, et cetera?
Yeah. So when I think of so you have a bucket of savings and investments, right? We talked about, Jan, in case of emergency funds, the 3 to 6 months of your salary for in case of emergency fund that would probably remain fairly liquid to you, that you could get cash the next day. And then we kind of coupled that with the 50, 20, 30. So that 20% bucket. I think the biggest thing you need to look at when you're putting away money is probably 10 to 12%, getting kind of your sea legs under you when it comes to investing, because not taking anything for granted, that is a large sum of money. So understanding what you're comfortable with and kind of working with a professional to get those numbers exactly right for your budget and your objectives, I'd say.
Very good. Now, and then let us know other questions you have coming in here. And let us know how the participants can get a hold of you or this presentation, how they can come and consult you, to get those individual customized recommendations.
Sure. And happy to, I'm very cognizant of everyone's time, understanding as residents, very busy. So probably best way is I will leave my contact information with one of our trusted individuals at the university. If you do have any further questions, I'll just have my contact info left and probably sent to the group from a university staff member, so I'm not emailing you directly. And send out a date, send out a time. If email correspondence is better, phone call, text. I work around your schedules, answer any questions possible. Heck, if you have a question, even if you work with a financial planner, or if you want me to recommend a financial planner, I'm even happy to do that. I work with a lot of terrific people that they're competitors in one life, but I would send family members and friends to them as well, alongside myself. So happy to accommodate any request.
Well, very good. I have a couple of more questions here. What are your thoughts on 529 plans, and is it worth it for planning education funds for future children?
Yes, absolutely. 529 plans are extremely important if you have kids and it's an objective of yours to pay for their education costs. 529 plans similarly hold Roth IRA provisions where if funds are being used for higher education, qualified higher education, gains in principal are both tax-free to the investor. So they hold that special Roth provision if they go towards higher education costs. They also hold kind of cool, if you go through the Colorado College America 529 plan, for instance, you're actually able to deduct your contribution to your state tax returns. So there's cool little provisions within 529 plans that definitely need to be taken advantage of if that's an objective of yours.
Very good. And any thoughts on high interest savings accounts?
I don't know of many high interest savings accounts, as unfortunately, if anyone watches bond markets, the 10-year treasury note, for instance, has hit all-time lows. So if you are saving with a bank and you're looking for high interest, just know banks and accrediting institutions use their interest models based upon federal funds rate, that 10-year treasury note. And like I said, that 10-year treasury note is an all-time low for interest rates currently. However, if you do know of any options, or if any options are pushed to you, I'd be more than happy to tip my hat and say if that's available and reasonable, then by all means invest in a high interest account.
Well, thank you, Jeff. So we would like to be respectful of everyone's time. And while Jeff has graciously offered to stay on and continue answering questions, I want to mention a few things for those of you who need to leave. So thank you, Jeff, for joining us today and the insight on pragmatic financial planning. House staff, we appreciate you spending the last hour with us, and hopefully this was helpful to all of you. I would like to invite you to join us on a couple of our upcoming events. First is our virtual Happy and Healthy Hour on, it would be May 12th at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. This is the session on our ongoing series of talented speakers and interesting topics. Dr. Jean Watson, an alumna of the CU School of Nursing, will present. Our participants will be invited to engage with Watson's 7 sacred sutras in the form of deep caring for self. In addition, I would like to invite you to join us for an evening of music with Ethan Lazarus. Listen to Dr. Lazarus play original pieces on the piano and cello and with full orchestra, and share an inspiration for each piece. It'll be a wonderful hour of music and an opportunity to unwind with a fellow alumni. Dr. Lazarus is 1996 CU Medical School graduate. If you have any colleagues or friends that you would feel would enjoy these events, the recordings will be uploaded to our CU Anschutz alumni YouTube channel very soon. Thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your week. Thanks, everybody.